I wanted to have a look at this video now, and it's a video on a theory called the Great Reset. Now, it's a theory that I don't believe in, but it is nonetheless fascinating. So we're going to check this out. What is the Great Reset? And he says no one talks about. I beg to differ. Some people do talk about the Great Reset. It is a fascinating theory, and I think it would be perfect for a movie or a video game. Let's have a look.
Imagine waking up one day to find the world completely different. Not just a few new buildings, but whole cities transformed almost overnight. Governments gone, rulers replaced, and even the story of how we got here rewritten from the ground up. The Great Reset theory suggests this isn't just a possibility. It may have already happened, perhaps more than once. It claims our history is not a smooth and gradual timeline.
Let me have a look at this. Hypothetical cyclical timeline with catastrophic resets. Catastrophic. I wish though, because this is nice and all, but I wish there, so 300, 250, are these years? It looks like every 50 years, but we would have seen it. So what kind of cycles? Societal complexity, infrastructure. Well, let's continue. I'm sure he will explain.
But a series of cycles, each ending with an event so catastrophic that it wipes away the old world and replaces it with something new. In this view, the survivors don't rebuild exactly what was lost. Instead, they inherit the ruins, claim the credit, and create a new version of history that hides the truth about the civilization that came before. If you could watch the 19th century play out in fast forward, you would see technology and infrastructure appear very quickly across many places at once.
Right.
Steam power spreads and railways link towns and cities. Telegraph lines allow messages to cross countries and continents in seconds. Photography records streets, bridges, and public buildings that look complete before large populations arrive to use them. Electric light leaves the lab and shows up in streets, fairs, factories, and theaters. In a few decades, telephones, elevators, subways, automobiles, airplanes, radio, and recorded sound move from new ideas to everyday tools.
You know, once again, I like listening to all sorts of theories, and the more out there the theory is, the more I find it intriguing to like, oh yeah, well, what is this? What is this? So basically what he's saying, for what I understand up to this point, is that there is a massive event that occurs, catastrophic, every a set amount of time. It destroys everything, but there are some survivors. The survivors hide the truth. So already we would have to ask why. Why do they always hide the truth? Right? That should be the first thing we need to ask. And why do they all collaborate? Why isn't there like a single group that says, no, we're not okay with that? And then it also takes away from crediting the actual people that invented this stuff, which that's the part that makes me like, oh, it's not right. Anyways, let's continue. Let's see how they justify it, because you can theorize anything. They're rewriting all the history. Okay.
The curve feels less like step-by-step invention and more like stored knowledge switching on all at once. Some researchers say this was not a random burst of genius, but old knowledge brought back after a disaster.
You know, even that, it actually doesn't. If you watch this, and and I don't even know if the guy endorses it, or if he's just presenting it to us, but doesn't believe it, benefit of the doubt. But when I hear this and I feel, it doesn't feel like a progression. Actually, it does. Look at computers. If you look at the history of computers and how like we went from the vacuum the vacuum tubes, all the way up to transistors, and then all the different iterations of it changing all the time as more money was put into it by, like, for instance, colossi like IBM that initially held 80% of the market, 80%. Now they have like 1%. 80% of the market was in their hands, and these first computers that were as big as a room. If we went from the freaking vacuum tubes with glass, if we went from that to the modern iPhone in a year, then I'd be like, that's impossible. But because we do see the exact, which given it's not a linear progression, it's incremental. I get that. But then again, that's also to be expected. It's exponential. But there is a continuous, we did go from this to this other type to this other type, and now this, and this is more, and this is that, and the more money is put into it, profit generated. It is what it is. I don't see it.
They note that city grids, power stations, and telegraph networks are presented as firsts, yet the parts work together smoothly, which they say suggests earlier planning. Critics say these patterns come from industrial growth, bigger cities, and better education, so the two sides disagree.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.
There is another claim that makes the reset theory feel even stranger.
Okay.
It says the biggest cover-up is not in the rubble, but in the calendar.
The calendar.
Supporters argue that after a major disaster, with heavy loss of life and missing records, later officials added many years to the timeline, possibly hundreds or even 1,000, to create distance from the event. If a world-ending event
Did he say thousands?
missing records, later officials added many years to the timeline, possibly hundreds or even 1,000, to create distance from the event.
How do you shut up the people that know the truth, though? So if there is a catastrophic event, and I would like to know, I imagine this has to be global, because otherwise you would change the calendar in Japan, but the rest of the world doesn't do that, and so there would be mismatching. So these have to be global events that we are hypothesizing here. So if you have a global event and people die left and right, but there are survivors, how do you shut every single one of them when the history is changed and the calendar is changed? So it would mean, like, if a catastrophe like this happened tomorrow, and then many of us die, but some of us survive, and then what happens is that, oh, we are actually in 3100, we are in 3026. So it never happened. But I would be like, no, what are you talking about? How do you shut the entirety of the population that has experienced that? It's a fun conspiracy theory, but and again, I don't reject every conspiracy theory, but I will scrutinize them before I just immediately accept them. Like, I'm kind of in between the middle when it comes to conspiracy theories. I don't immediately mock them, but at the same time, like, I don't understand how they function. And one of the main problems with conspiracy theories is that they would require it's similar to the moon landing. Why wouldn't the Russians point to the hoax? Why would they play along? They are the enemies of the United States. So that's the thing. You have to have everyone agreeing with the theorists, the propagandists. Like, every single one would have to be, yes, we are in on it. All of them, from all universities, from all places, from all nations throughout the earth, they all agree. It just doesn't work.
If a world-ending event happened only a few centuries ago, calling it ancient would make it seem too far away to question. They point to repeated styles in art, clothing, and architecture that seem to reappear too soon, royal family lines
Too soon based on what expectation?
that look copied, and dates that line up with round or symbolic numbers. In this theory, extra centuries were added as a kind of padding between us and the last catastrophe.
So basically, like, skipped 300 years. So something happened in 1500, and whenever we read history about 1613, 1741, it's all made up. It never existed. What about all the clothes, this is, it's unsustainable. They would have had to fake all of the archaeology. And when we talk about the 18th century, so imagine 1710, all the wars, the revolutions, all of that was faked, and yet we have all the evidence, the paintings, the drawings, the level of perfection and precision, not to mention the amount of resources needed to pull something off like this. Once again, at the planetary level. And why do you do it? Like, if there was an event, wouldn't you need those resources to rebuild at that point? I'm not feeling this one, guys. I'm not feeling it. For a
Extra
game,
space
though.
hides how close it really was. Over time, edited timelines become official, copies replace originals, and schools teach the new version until most people forget there was a change. This claim is controversial and not accepted by most historians, but it raises a simple warning. If the timeline can be adjusted, then the story of the past can be adjusted with it.
Well, the story of the past can indeed be adjusted, and we do see that they are trying to rewrite history. And when I use rewrite history, of course, history has to be continuously rewritten, but only, it's not that it's wrong to rewrite history. You can and totally do rewrite history in the presence of new evidence, right? Because if there is new evidence, and we thought that the battle happened in this year, but it actually happened 2 years before, and now there is evidence for that, or maybe it happened, they used to say it was at this river, but it's actually down at the hill, and we have evidence to prove that, then of course we will rewrite history. But the problem that we see is that history has been rewritten as a messaging to push specific ideas, like for instance what's happening in the UK, where they continuously tell you, look, we found these bones, they are Brittonic, they are Anglo-Saxon, but they are black, so people have been here building Britain all together, so accept illegal immigration and waves of illegals. That is what they're trying to do. But then they actually identify, when people look into it, they identify that Diana is wrong and the girl was actually blonde with blue eyes and it was all a facade, it was all fake. So the rewriting of history is a tool the power uses. And that's true, that's not a conspiracy. Now, you say maybe Mandela effect. It kind of feels like a sort of Mandela effect, but like multiplied by 100.
In the late 1800s, many big cities had the same strange pattern. A huge fire would sweep through the downtown area that would destroy government buildings, offices, and warehouses. Soon after, the city would be rebuilt with surprising speed.
Okay.
The new buildings were huge and detailed. Massive stone arches, tall spires, and copper domes appeared, and narrow roads were replaced by wide boulevards and grand plazas. Some believe these fires were not just accidents, but a way to clear land and make it easy to take over old areas.
This one is something I can be like, yeah, I mean, it's possible. We would have to look into it, but this makes more sense. The fire was done on purpose. There was a machination behind, maybe. I can't say that. This one is not illogical, at least.
Then came the World Fairs. Massive temporary cities were built in months, full of palaces, fountains, statues, and electric lights. They looked permanent, like real capital cities, but photos often show the plazas nearly empty, with more workers than visitors. When the fairs ended, most of the buildings were torn down. What didn't fit the new story was destroyed, and what could be reused was renamed and kept. To some researchers, the fires and fairs worked together. The fires cleared the space, and the fairs showed the public a new version of history.
I hate it when they say researchers, scientists, never give names.
Researchers say a sudden event in the last few centuries buried parts of cities under mud, soil, and debris, and they call this a mud flood. They point to windows below street level, doors that open into dirt, and new streets built on top of older, intact streets. Tours in places like Seattle and Edinburgh show underground sidewalks and storefronts that used to be at ground level. If such events happened, they could explain why many buildings look half buried and why some populations seem to vanish from records during the same period.
This is a separate conspiracy. So that was the one we just finished, just for clarity. The one we just finished was the Great Reset. But now they think they went into this mud flood that some people believe was a thing. Man, are they going to mention Venice then? I wonder.
Reporters say a reset could follow a disaster like this.
Never mind, they're connected.
With new rulers taking power, renaming places, and writing a new history. Skeptics point to planned street-raising projects, local floods, fires, and normal rebuilding as better explanations. So this point remains disputed.
Okay.
We talk more about this topic in our previous videos about buried buildings, so if you're interested, make sure to check them out.
I think this is a partial, because it could be, although it needs to be proven, possibly like mentions in archives, that kind of stuff, but it could be that like a building was built, but then there was a freaking mud flood, and then that part was buried, and then eventually was kind of liberated again, freed. They kind of add, oh, it's the people in power that are doing it, and they are using it to ignite the Great Reset, and so in reality, the history is 100 years old. Like, it's the whole addition, which makes it interesting, but to me fake. But then the mud thing could be. It could be.
If a reset is real, the most valuable resource is not land or gold. It is memory and access to records. Libraries can burn during war, but archives can also be locked during peace, and access rules can change what the public can learn. Blueprints
Yeah.
can disappear when buildings change owners or during renovations when paperwork is lost or discarded. City plans are updated, while original drawings are boxed and removed from public view. Census records sometimes skip years, and the gaps are not explained in detail. Newspapers merge and digitize, and entire documents can go missing during the process. Maps are redrawn with new names, while older borders are removed, renamed, or pushed into footnotes. Under many capital cities, there are tunnels, vaults, and secure
Yeah.
rooms with records that only a small group can access.
Not for a second do we think that normal civilians have access to all the information that the people who lead and the powers that be have access to. This isn't, obviously, you don't even need like a mysterious music for this. Yeah, it's clear, obviously, the government is not going to share everything they know with the civilian population. That there is a need to know basis in any government, and I'm going to add the church with that. I have been to the secret Vatican archives. I was invited. I did go. The vaults are enormous, so who the heck knows what's inside? 100% there is stuff that they don't share for political reasons, for reasons of control. That's 100%.
The story a nation tells is shaped by the people who control access to these records. If resets change who has power, they also change what the public is allowed to remember and verify. You shape the future by deciding which books people can read, and you define the past by deciding which records people can search.
You know, this is true. I agree with what he just said. And we have two drastic methods when it comes to control of information, specifically when it comes to books. We have what the Nazis have done, which was burn the books. And so these books not accepted, burn it. And this is, in fact, that is the most common under totalitarian regimes. Fascists did it too in Italy. The USSR, don't for a second, I mean, they try to ban the entirety of the concept of religion, for instance. The idea of, I burn them so you don't have access to it, that's one way. The other way that instead we are experiencing now, and that's a fact, is the sensitivity readers. So what they're doing, and this is provable, is that they take a book that, for instance, is, say, a book that children read or a book that students read. They take it, and what they do is say the last publication was from 1998. They do a new publication, but in the new publication, first they have the sensitivity readers. What they do is that they are paid, imagine the job, they are paid to get offended. So they get to a point where he says, the cloud men, that's misogynistic. Are you saying that the cloud are the men and in the sense of masculinity? Let's call them cloud people. So they will modify the language. And language is an instrument of control. And so, of course, this does and has reached insane levels of censorship. And once again, the idea is to push the new language into the new generation, usually without the parents even knowing.
When records are not accessible, the facts become unknown, and repeated claims are treated as true. Silence is often not the absence of facts, but the result of someone choosing to hide them.
Okay, interesting statement.
One version of the reset idea focuses on the lost civilization of Tartaria. Supporters say a major disaster covered many first floors with mud and debris, and later populations moved into these cities and claimed them as their own work.
Okay.
They point to windows below sidewalks.
See, that's the part that I find difficult. The Tartaria thing is fascinating, but I might need to have a dedicated video for it to go actually review the data first. Thing is, though, why would people do this? Why would they claim we built this? I mean, we didn't do it with the Romans, sort of. Like medieval people didn't claim we built it. We built the ruins. No, they did. We know it was the Romans when it was the Greeks before. And we have a clear succession from Byzantium to Constantinople to Istanbul. So it's kind of strange.
Doors into fill, bricked over arches, and new streets laid over intact older streets, along with domes, star forts, and large stone buildings that look similar across many regions. Old European maps often label large areas in Central and Northern Asia as Tartaria, or Tartary, which supporters cite as evidence that this civilization existed and later disappeared from school lessons.
Or
Most
changed
historians give other
nomenclature.
explanations, including planned street razing, local floods and fires, changes in borders and names, and normal urban growth, so the two sides disagree.
That's what I would say, yes.
If you want more details on Tartaria maps, architecture, photographs, and the debate about giants, watch our video, They buried a whole civilization and lied about it. For today,
So it feels like this is one of those channels that actually pushes, which is their right to do. But then again, the one thing that the video is a little weak is there isn't any. Like, there are no names. It's fine. It's kind of telling you a story. I'm sure some people like it. Subscribers to the channel, be my guests. But I'm definitely not convinced.
we are focusing on the pattern that matters for the reset idea. The pattern is fast change, new rulers, and a rewritten past. After a disaster, leaders can change place names and street plans, update building rules, control archives, close records, and publish new maps and timelines. Schools then teach the new version for years, and most people grow up treating it as the only version, especially if older books, maps, and photos are hard to access. The key question is simple. Who benefits when the world resets?
Right.
In any collapse, the people who control transport, communication, energy, and food gain the most leverage. They move into the strongest buildings, take over key offices, rename institutions, set the calendar, and approve the textbooks. They decide which technologies return first, which are delayed, and which are kept out of public use.
When it comes to that kind of control of technology, the only conspiracy that I'm actually convinced is true is planned obsolescence. Well, I can't say 100%. Owning so much tech that is like by now 40 years old and it still works marvelously. New stuff breaks all the time. I do feel like there is a planned obsolescence because they benefit from it. Or this idea in conjunction with you have a perfectly viable TV, but hey, here's the new model. It's a little slightly more curved. You need it, buy it again. You know, that kind of stuff. Whereas like in the 80s, you buy a TV, it's good. That's your TV. Have fun for the next 30 years. Yeah, but now, given, the one thing I have to say is, of course, modern technology is a lot more complex. So when you increase complexity, there are many more things that can go wrong. But then again, as well, our science is a completely different level. Our engineers, we have computers helping, we have AI helping. So at this point, it feels strange when you compare.
Over time, a gap can appear between what we have and what we can explain. A cathedral still stands, but no one knows how to build another like it. Or a network that still works, but the manual is gone. People think it's progress when a new device is released, but few ask who decides to release them or what earlier designs were held back. Maybe that's why the reset theory won't go away. It offers a clear model for how control over records, tools, and names can shape an entire era. Whether the Great Reset is real or not, the idea pushes us to check patterns in records, buildings.
I do love this picture. Look at the perspective. It's kind of similar to what they did in Little Nightmares, if you remember. One of the ways they made, because to me, Little Nightmares 1 and 2 were masterworks. Particularly the second one is the one I like the most because there is the city. And when you enter the city, all the buildings are not straight. They're curved towards the player and it gives this feel of being overwhelmed and feeling small and like there is something like a threat. So this reminded me of that. Look at this misplaced building, how it's leaning forward and it looks scary, particularly from this perspective.
And maps, rather than accept one official story. Why do so many cities have sealed off lower levels and missing years in their records? Why do so many official explanations sound the same? Why do some buildings look older, stranger, and more advanced than the time they're said to come from? If a reset happened before, it could happen again. And if it did, we could wake up in a world where our own timeline is edited. History is not something we remember by instinct. It is something we rebuild from records, and records can be changed, removed.
Right, yes, but history is not remembered by instinct. So that's kind of a weird way to put it. That's a beautiful picture, though.
Or restricted.
Okay, cool. So we watched the whole video. The video was fun to watch. It's just that, it's kind of a creepypasta, isn't it? Yeah, maybe I should start looking into that at one point. Very cool, very cool.